Hello, I'm Ken Bauman, aka Stacked EDH, and I've learned recently from a breaking news report that Krark Sakashima is a complicated and sometimes time-consuming deck. I, for one, am deeply offended by this fact, so I've decided to take to YouTube and make a little tutorial video helping Krark pilots and opponents who play regularly against Krark decks do Krark things well or prevent Krark from doing things well. So this is going to be a video tutorial in which I explain the intricacies and subtleties of Krark triggers. I explain how to move efficiently through storm turns, how to track your resources responsibly, how to expedite passing priority, whether you're the active player or non-active player during a Krark storm turn, and answer some common questions. I'm going to do my damnedest to be thorough, but I'm also going to be casual because I am exhausted and I have a goopy goblin gamer brain and it's terminal. So we are going to jump right into the meat of it now, and hopefully this video helps you have fun and play games efficiently. Okay, let's go. We're going to start with the simplest example. Imagine that you are a Krark Sakashima pilot. You control 2 lands and Krark the Thumbless. You untap, it's turn 3. You play a 3rd land. You have a Ponder in your hand. You tap one of your lands and you cast Ponder. Now what happens? Krark the Thumbless sees that you've cast an instant or sorcery, and his ability will trigger. You now receive priority. What the stack looks like, there is a Krark trigger on top of the original Ponder that you've cast. If you pass priority on the Krark trigger, and your opponent's pass priority on the Krark trigger, you now resolve the trigger. That means that you flip a coin. If you win the flip, you immediately put a copy of Ponder onto the stack and receive priority. If you pass priority and all of your opponents pass priority on that copy of Ponder, it resolves and you do the thing. You look at the top 3 and draw a card or shuffle or whatever. Now, let's imagine that instead of winning the Krark trigger, you lose that flip. What happens? Nobody gets priority. As soon as that trigger resolves and you flip a coin and you lose, that original Ponder goes right back to your hand. This is my bulldog running. Anyway, that Ponder goes right back to your hand no matter what. Nobody gets priority. Nobody can interact at that point. Lost flip, spell back to your hand. Okay? Now, let's change the circumstance a little bit. You tap a land, you cast Ponder. There's a Krark trigger on top of Ponder on the stack. You pass priority on the Krark trigger. Let's imagine your first opponent says, nope, I'm going to counter the original Ponder. I'll cast Pact of Negation targeting it. Let's assume that you don't have any counter magic in your hand, and all your opponents are fine with that. Pact of Negation above the Krark trigger will resolve. Counter the original Ponder, which is the bottom of the stack, that will go to the graveyard. Now, you're back at the Krark trigger. 2 things can happen here. If you win your flip, Krark's triggered ability will create a copy of Ponder still. Krark's triggered ability doesn't give a damn where the original instant or sorcery is when you win a flip. It still creates a copy. That original spell can be back in your hand, in the graveyard, in exile, in Missouri. It does not matter. You'll still make a copy of Ponder and receive priority. Now, if you lose the Krark trigger, and again, that original spell has already been countered, does the Ponder, which is in your graveyard, return to your hand? No. If you lose a flip on a Krark trigger, it will return the instant or sorcery to your hand only if that original spell is still on the stack as the ability resolves. So that's why responding to Krark triggers by countering the original spell is often wise for opponents because it prevents the Krark player from copying, returning to their hand, and recasting all of their instants and sorceries. All right, that's the simplest example. We're going to bump it up to you controlling Krark and Sakashima as Krark and a creature with Magecraft. In this case, it's going to be Stormkiln Artist. Same situation. You have 3 lands. You control Krark, Sakashima as Krark, and Stormkiln Artist. You tap one of your lands, you cast Ponder. What happens? Well, you have 3 creatures whose abilities trigger. You get to choose the order in which those triggers are placed on the stack. Let's imagine you want the mana first. So you put the Stormkiln Artist trigger at the very tippy top, and then you put the Sakashima's Krark trigger, and then the original Krark trigger, and below all that is the original Ponder. You've got priority in response to the Stormkiln Artist Magecraft trigger. You pass priority. Let's assume all your opponents do too. Congratulations, you make a treasure token. Then you move to the Sakashima's Krark trigger. Let's imagine you win that flip, and all the opponents pass priority on it, and you get to resolve the ability. You win that flip, now what happens? Well, two things. One, you put your copy of Ponder onto the stack as per winning a flip, and because you have copied an instant or sorcery, Stormkiln Artist Magecraft trigger happens. That Magecraft trigger is going to go on top of the copy because the copy gets put on the stack, and as part of that process, Magecraft triggers. So Magecraft will be above that copy in all of those instances. You receive priority. Assuming you pass priority and all your opponents pass priority on the Magecraft ability, you make another treasure token, and then you are back at the copy of Ponder on the stack. You pass priority, all your opponents pass priority, you do the Ponder thing. You move to your second Krark trigger. Let's imagine you lose that flip. Again, what happens? Well, it immediately goes back to your hand, the original Ponder. Nobody gets priority, nobody can interact with that, boom. The original Ponder is right back in your hand. The stack is now clear. You have 2 treasure tokens and 2 mana still up, and you can keep going. That is basically the essential feature of a lot of Krark decks, are just situations like that. They'll maybe be a little bit more convoluted. They'll maybe require many more triggers, but structurally, they're always going to look like that. You're going to go one at a time. You're going to order your triggers when you cast an instant or sorcery, however you choose. You're going to receive priority on each object on the stack, be it an ability, a copy of a spell, or an original spell. You pass priority, your opponents pass priority, you do the thing top down. The stack is like a stack of pancakes. You eat it from the top down. Just deal with the very top pancake at any given moment, and you're going to be A-okay. All right. Time for one of the advanced questions when you're piloting a Krark deck. Let's imagine that you're a Krark Sakashima pilot. You control Krark, Sakashima as Krark, and for the hell of it, let's say you control an Archmage Emeritus, which has Magecraft, draw a card. Okay, your storm count is 10. You've been spinning your wheels a lot, the turn's going well, you're doing stormy things, you're flipping lots of coins. The storm count is 10. You have 6 mana floating, 4 blue, blue, and you have Mind's Desire in your hand. Let's imagine you use all of your available floating mana, you cast Mind's Desire. Now, you've got a choice here. Storm is a triggered ability that triggers when you cast from your hand a spell with Storm. So, you can either put that Storm triggered ability on top of your Krark triggers and your Magecraft trigger, or you can put the Krark triggers and or the Magecraft trigger above the Storm trigger. I think generally it's pretty wise to put the Storm trigger first, because when you control a creature with Magecraft triggers whenever you put a copy onto the stack, and Storm puts a bunch of copies onto the stack, so typically Magecraft just goes nuts with Storm right out of the gate and you accrue a bunch of resources. But anyway, we'll return to our example. Let's say that you want to put the Storm trigger of Mind's Desire on top of your Archmage Emeritus trigger, and then underneath that you want to put the 2 Krark triggers. Okay, what happens? Well, you receive priority. You pass priority in response to that Storm trigger. Let's imagine your 3 opponents pass priority in response to that Storm trigger. Congratulations, it resolves. The Storm count was 10 before you put Mind's Desire in the stack, which means Mind's Desire is the 11th spell you've cast this turn, which means that when the Storm trigger resolves, you'll make 10 copies of Mind's Desire. You immediately put those copies onto the stack, but your creature with Magecraft, Archmage Emeritus, sees you do that and says, hey, I want to trigger each time you do that. So on top of the 10 copies of Mind's Desire, you're going to have 10 Archmage Emeritus Magecraft triggers. Again, it's a big stack of pancakes, but you eat it top down. So at the very, very tippy top is the topmost Archmage Emeritus trigger. You get to pass priority on it. If everybody passes priority, you draw a card. Then you move to 2 out of 10, 3 out of 10, 4 out of 10, etc., etc. You've drawn your 10 cards. You're at the topmost copy of Mind's Desire. No more Archmage triggers above it. You receive priority again. If your opponent's passed priority, you do the thing. You shuffle, you flip the top card, and until end of turn, you can cast that card or play it for free. You keep going down, and then below all those storm copies, remember, we put the original Archmage trigger for just casting the original instant or sorcery, in this case, Mind's Desire. If you pass priority on it, and all your opponents pass priority on it, you draw a card, and then you get your Krark triggers. You get to flip coins to see if you copy Mind's Desire again and trigger Archmage Emeritus again because you've made a copy, or see if you put that original Mind's Desire back in your hand, and hopefully you do so you can cast it again. So that's a more complicated example, right? But again, you don't need to panic. Nothing that crazy is happening. You're just choosing the order that things go in, and you're resolving one triggered ability at a time and doing what that triggered ability tells you to do. That's it. So hopefully that more advanced example helps when dealing with cards with the storm triggered ability printed on them. Okay, hi, back for more Krark stuff. So I had a whole section talking about Invoke Calamity. Oh my god, Krark stole my beard. Okay, anyway, I had a whole section involving Invoke Calamity, but it was a little bit long. The TLDR is pretty simple. Just go to the Siskel and Ebert primer on Moxfield and read about Invoke Calamity. Basically, if you copy it, it can find itself in your hand or in the graveyard to cast itself to do more Invoke Calamity stuff. Whatever. But I want to talk about something very important now. I want to talk about how to keep track efficiently of your resources during a Krark storm turn. Okay, so here's what I usually see when I'm sitting at the table piloting Krark Sakashima. You can see I've got the library up top in the left. I've got my hand there on the table. I keep track of the turn count here, storm count here with a really heavy metal D20 so that it doesn't accidentally get flipped to the wrong side. Commanders up top, I use these green spike feeder dice to keep track of how many times I've cast the commander or the commander tax. Treasure, red mana, blue mana floating, colorless mana floating. And then when I get to a situation in which I need to put a Krark trigger on the stack, I just use these, for now, these pile of Krark altars. So I'll just pull one with my right-handed side and throw it on the battlefield on top of the original spell. So this is essentially the setup I've got. I got a lot of D6s, casino D6s. They're sharp as hell, but they're really fair. Coins to keep track of upkeep triggers and stuff. D20s when the mana starts piling up, and then other dice that are commonly rolled in a game of Commander. So yeah, this is the setup. Oh, also, and tokens to the left with some Infina tokens, and then everything sorted alphabetically. That's it. Not too complicated. Next up, I want to show you a quick example of moving through a storm turn efficiently. You can see essentially how I would play it if I were at a comp REL setting in which you have to announce all your triggers, no shortcuts allowed, blah, blah, blah. All right, so it is going to be turn 4. We'll untap, upkeep, draw, 3 cards in hand. I will play a Training Center as my land for turn. I will tap for 1, 2, 3, 4, blue, red, red, red. Life total is currently 38. I'm going to cast a Treasonous Ogre, storm count 1. Any response to T-Ogre? Good? All right, I'm going to pay 3, 6, 9. Activate Treasonous Ogre 3 times. All right, so I've got 3 red in my pool. I'm going to immediately use it all and go up to storm count 2 and cast last card in hand, Jeska's Will. I'm going to target blue farm, choose both modes, and I have 2 Krark triggers on Jeska's Will. Is the topmost trigger okay? Excellent. Evens will always copy, odds will always return it to my hand. We'll roll. 5, Jeska's Will return to my hand. I'm going to turn it sideways to indicate that. Next Krark trigger okay. Excellent. Same thing. Evens copy, odds back to hand. 2, copy of Jeska's Will in the stack. Trigger Tavern Scoundrel for winning a coin flip. Is that okay? Okay, good. I will make 2 treasures. And now we've got the copy of Jeska's Will on the stack. Any response? All right, so it'll resolve. I'm going to make 5 red. And I'm going to exile the top 3 cards in my library. And again, this is in my hand. Here we go. Mental Misstep, Ponder, and Psych Rift. All right, I'm going to put these up here. They're exiled until end of turn. I'm going to pay 3 more life, or 9 more life. So I went from 38 to 29. And now I'm going to go to a flat 20. Activate T-Ogre and try Jessica's Will again. Get the 2 Krark triggers. Any response to the topmost Krark trigger? All right, excellent. I'll flip. Evens copy, odds back to hand. Odds back to hand. Next Krark trigger. Roll. And we got 3. Nothing happens. I'll pay 9 more life into Treasonous Ogre. Go to 11. And activate. Get 3 red. Use 3 red. Jessica's Will, same thing. 2 Krark triggers. Topmost Krark trigger. Evens copy. Storm count is 3. Odds. It goes back to hand. And next trigger. 3. Nothing happens. We'll go to 2 and cast Jessica's Will again. Get the 2 Krark triggers. Storm count 4. And here we go. Topmost trigger, okay. Great. 5. Jessica's Will goes back to hand. Next Krark trigger, okay. We're going to use a different die because I'm superstitious. Here we go. 1. Nothing happens. J Will back to hand. I'm going to tap this volcanic island for a blue, and I want to cast a Ponder. 2 Krark triggers. Boom, boom. Topmost Krark trigger, okay. Here we go. Roll. Storm count 5. 1. Ponder back to hand. Next Krark trigger. All right. Roll. 4. Copy a Ponder. Trigger Tavern Scoundrel to make 2 treasures. Go up to 4 treasures. Is the copy of Ponder okay? Okay, it'll resolve. Look at the top 3. 1, 2, 3. All right, I'm going to leave them like so, and I'm going to draw this one here. Put it right up top. Ponder's back in my hand. I will use 3 of the red, go into 2 red, storm count 6. Cast J Will again, same target. Trigger, trigger. Any response to the topmost Krark trigger? Great. I'll flip. 5, back to hand. Next Krark trigger. 5, back to hand, nothing happens. I'm going to use the 2 floating red I had, crack a treasure, go into 3 treasures. Cast Jessica's Will again, storm count 7, same 2 targets. Or same target rather, same modes. Topmost Krark trigger, okay. Fine, we'll roll. 1, back to hand, next one. 2, copy. Is the copy of J Will okay? All right, excellent, we'll resolve it. We'll go up to 5 red again and exile top 3. 1, 2, 3. Mana Vault, Flusterstorm, and Cascade Bluffs. I'm going to use 1 of the floating red, go into 4 floating red, cast the Mana Vault. Mana Vault for 3 colorless, use 2 of it, go to 1 colorless, and use a red. Cast Jessica's Will again, same target. Trigger, trigger. Boop, boop. Topmost trigger, okay. Great. Storm count is 9. 6, copy of J Will on the stack. Is that all right? Good. Go up to 8 red, exile top 3. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Archmage Emeritus, Intuition, and SWAT. Next most Krark trigger on J Will. Here we go. Oh, make a 2 treasures for winning a flip from Tavern Scoundrel. Is that okay? Go to 5 treasures. And next Krark trigger. 5 rather. Jessica's Will goes back to hand. Then I would like to use 1 of the treasures. Go to 4 treasures for a blue. And 2 of the red, go to 7 and 6 red. Storm count 10, cast Intuition, get the 2 Krark triggers. It's topmost Krark trigger, okay. Excellent. Flip. 4, copy, trigger Tavern Scoundrel, go up to 6 treasures, copy of Intuition on the stack, is that okay? We'll resolve it. I'll go get Grape Shot, Underworld Breach, Invoke Calamity. Okay, now, probably for half of you, or maybe over half of you, yeah, I don't want to think about the percentage. I'm going to tell you some fun tips that you can follow to adequately combat Krark and Sakashima decks in specific, but more generally, just Krark decks at your table, be it in a local meta or in a tournament setting. So I wrote a pretty long post on Reddit in a comment thread one day explaining in thorough detail how best to fight Krark decks. And you can find that link in the Siskel and Ebert primer on Moxfield. It is a little bit hidden, but you know, treasure hunts are fun. So anyway, I'm going to recap much of that post here now. I think the number one thing to do is remove Krark, right? That's the central engine for the deck. It's sitting in the command zone. Just get rid of Krark if you can, ideally with Sakashima on the stack, and it slows down the deck a lot. Now, Krark is only a 2-mana value creature, so recasting Krark once, twice, 3 times is sometimes sufficient to win the game. Just bear in mind, remove Krark, probably play more creature removal anyway. I think CDH decks in general are not playing enough creature removal. But you can see more about that in my CDH stats video called The Truth About CDH. Anyway, number 2 on that list is, Sakashima on the stack, interrupt Krark. Very clever. Number 3, Pyroclasm effects. They make me cry. So many of the deck's creatures are 2/2s. So just wipe the board. And then if you're in Krark Sakashima, you're in Izzet, so you can't really rebuild from your graveyard that easy. There you go. Number 4, it's almost always correct to respond to all of the Krark triggered abilities as an opponent in order to get the original spell off the stack. So in other words, you want to counter the original spell in response to the Krark triggers. That will prevent the Krark pilot from casting and then recasting and recasting and recasting and copying and returning into hand, etc., the spell. And that's the whole point. Disrupt the engine as it gets going or before it gets going. Don't rely on the flips. I hear so many times from opponents, oh, let's just wait and see what the first flip is. They've already lost at that point. Number 6, Jeska's Will. It's our ad nos. Just keep that in mind. You want to counter it, you want to remove it, you want to prevent it from being cast. Don't let Jeska's Will resolve. Number 7, again, keep in mind, it is sometimes entirely correct to waste powerful interaction. Use it on simple cantrips, like a Ponder or a Rite of Flame. Because again, rituals and card draw are all this deck needs in order to get going. And that's true for Krark Thrasios and Krark Tymna to some extent as well, although a little bit less so. And then last but not least, keep in mind that the Krark decks can also sometimes win out of nowhere. They can rebuild off a big Dockside or off a Treasonous Ogre or after some fish draws. Sometimes, the deck can just reassemble its engine quickly or find an A+B like Dualcaster Twin Flame or Breach or Dockside Baron, whatever. So just bear in mind that the Krark engine is not the sole threat in the deck, and the Krark engine can be reassembled. So don't sleep on the deck if it doesn't have much of a board presence, because particularly with Dockside, it can explode out of nowhere. Now, it's not as efficient as Thoracle Consult or Tainted Pact, right? That's like 3 to 4 mana. It can literally win out of nowhere, but it is capable. Krark decks are capable of accruing resources quickly and recovering after a lucky draw or a wheel or a big Dockside. Okay, those are the tips. Go out there and fry some goblins. No, I'm JK, don't do it. Let us win. Or let Krark tell us whether or not we win. Hop into the Thumbless Discord server. It's a very good group. We're moderated really well. Very kind, helpful people. Pretty chill place. So even if you want to learn how to combat Krark, jump in. We'll help you out. It's a very goofy group. And for the pilots out there, keep at it. If you bring your deck to a tournament, beware that, the deck can cost some long turns, so try to move really efficiently. And if you are playing the deck in a local meta, again, try to be an efficient Storm pilot, try to be a gracious opponent, and have fun. Live by the coin, die by the coin.